How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Push Start to Listen. I'm Steve from Broken Galaxy, and tonight we're going to take a brief look at the news of the week. And man, there was a ton of it this week. I really thought it was going to be kind of a light week. You know, not too much happened on Monday, but man, Tuesday we got flooded. Big thing to start off with that happened last night was the Sony State of Play. If you're interested in hearing about that, there's a video up on the channel already where I watched the whole thing and kind of talk over it. The audio was not great. I totally apologize for that. It was hard to kind of get a reference doing this by myself, but I got it all figured out now. But they announced some cool stuff. You know, nothing huge. You know, there wasn't any Elden Ring news or anything like that, but some kind of more, I guess you'd say, indie type titles that got announced. You know, stuff that's gonna give you something to play throughout the year. You know, not every presentation can be just completely loaded with, you know, AAA blockbusters. You know, there's a lot of games out there and a lot of studios cranking out some pretty cool stuff. So it was kind of nice to see them maybe get a chance to shine a little bit and kind of have their own showcase, so to speak. You know, from Sony, I imagine towards the summer, you know, we'll get more of the, you know, maybe the holiday big title news from them and all that stuff. But we followed that up with this morning, the Pokemon Presents, and the two kind of big things to take away from this. You know, they talked a little bit about the new Pokemon Snap, which comes out at the end of April, but the announce of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the remakes of the DS era Pokemon games. I mean, those were not Pokemon games that I played. I kind of tapped out after Yellow. I eventually went back a little bit later on in life and played Silver, I think it was, and I enjoyed it. I was a huge Pokemon fan growing up. You know, I didn't play the card game, but I certainly collected the cards at the time, and I played I think it was Red. I don't think I had Blue. I think I played Red, and then I played Yellow. And that was kind of what really kind of sparked my interest in Pokemon, and, you know, watched the cartoon like everybody else my age. And then I just kind of fell out of the series for whatever reason. I think it's because I think around that time after Yellow, I can't tell you how long it was until the next set, but I must have been on to something else. As it got to a point where around 2000, 2001, I wasn't really playing any handhelds. I was barely playing any console games. I was pretty much just playing PC stuff. So I kind of just skipped over all that stuff. I never bought a DS until much later on. Actually, I never owned a regular DS or DSi or DS Lite. I had a 3DS and a 2DS eventually. That's where I played Diamond. I'm trying to think. After that, I played... It was either X or Y, whichever one had the deer on the cover, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was still, I mean, those games are still exactly what they need to be, and they're still engrossing, and they're still engaging, and they're still captivating players that are my age or older that grew up with the series, and they're obviously still bringing in a younger audience. I think this is a good remake. Diamond and Pearl were always big sellers. Back when I used to work at a video game store that focused a little bit more on, you know, retro games, used games, and for DS games, I mean, Pearl and Diamond were top of the request list, you know, all the time. It obviously has a huge audience, and those people are going to be absolutely stoked. It looks very, very good. After that, Pokemon Legends Arceus. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. I watched the video back, and I made sure to write phonetic in my notes what the name of this game is. Excuse me. So it's a new game. It's developed by Game Freak. The remakes are actually not. The remakes are being made by somebody else. But Arceus is being made by Game Freak. It's definitely not a mainline Pokemon game. This is something else. That's why it's just Pokemon Legends Arceus. It doesn't have the color or element or whatever, you know, naming convention they want to go with. So this is a totally side thing, totally different. Coming out next year. It looks cool. It's tough to get a grasp of what that game actually is from what we saw. It looks a little Breath of the Wild-ish, which gets people excited, but I don't think you're going to see them, you know, I don't think you're going to see yourself having like a stamina meter and all that, but I think it's more so that open world, you know, you can kind of go where you want type thing. Having the different camera angle, I really think sells that point. You know, there was a clip in the footage of the camera being behind the back of the trainer in third person and seeing you throw the Pokeball. There was another one where you saw your Pokemon in front of you running out to attack an opponent, you know, somewhat in the distance from you. So it's kind of funny just having that camera swing back a little bit really changes the look and feel of that game, and it's a much more powerful thing than you think that it would be. You're so used to those games having a very specific look and a very specific feel, and so to change it and have it being made by Game Freak, having that stamp of approval, like, hey, this is a major game in this franchise, while it's not the next, I guess you would say, core entry in the franchise, it is something quite big and something quite different for them to do, and that's really cool. And then Pokemon Snap they showed. We've seen a little bit of that before. We got a little bit deeper dive. They kind of went into maybe some of some more of the story, I guess, elements you would say of the game. I mean, the lore is the lore of Pokemon, but saying like, oh, you're doing this for a professor, which you're always doing the grunt work for a professor in these games. It looks nice. I played Pokemon Snap as a kid. I rented it. And played the hell out of it for the weekend that I had it, and I don't know, it was one of those games where it was just like, that was cool, that was weird, that was different. At the time as a kid, you don't really think anything of it, especially with another one like Hey You Pikachu, about like how weird and kind of different that was, because you think about like a big tentpole franchise being able to do something that different, that very separate kind of thing from what that game is expected to be and what it has been. So it's cool seeing them bring that back. The nostalgia for that game has certainly grown over the years, and this seems like a good time to do it. It's an anniversary year for Pokemon. Tomorrow is actually the date. Was it 25 years ago that Pokemon released in Japan? It makes sense. Let's bring back something neat, something interesting for fans. But I think that seeing Snap come out this year, and now seeing Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out later this year. We saw that Nintendo Direct last week where it was a little misleading. They said, all these games are going to be, first half of 2021, and then they showed numerous games that were coming out either past the first half of 2021 or coming out in 2022, and I get that if they just focused on the games that they had that were coming out in the first half, it would have been a very short Nintendo Direct. But between these Pokemon releases and like Mario Golf, I think Nintendo is going to have a very kind of quiet year, but I think they're going to have a very, very successful year. Mario Golf is going to sell. Pokemon Snap is going to sell. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are going to sell. I mean, those are going to be big purchases. Everybody's going to be running out to buy those things. So while Sony and Xbox are kind of like, we got to try and manufacture these consoles and get them into stores, they're doing the best they can, and this isn't, trying to be negative against them. They're working within the confines of the world that we're living in right now. Nintendo is really going to have a very, very solid year, and that's awesome for them. It's nice to have those options. Right now, someone like me, I wasn't able to get a PS5. I'm still waiting on getting a PS5. I can go play my Switch, and I can go enjoy my Switch, and I can go enjoy those games that are coming out. I picked up Mario 3D World, and I've been enjoying that. I played it on the Wii U, but it's nice to kind of go back to it. It's nice to just have new stuff coming out for a system, and you kind of get that feeling, right? That little bit of a rush that's like, oh, there's a new game coming out. Everybody's talking about it. I get to join in. And not so much, there's a new game coming out. Some people get to play it, but others don't just because they can't find the system. So it's nice to kind of have something to look forward to, knowing that you can actually, be able to play it. So, moving past Pokemon, I guess probably the next biggest thing of the week is going to be the fact that EA finally made the decision on what they were going to do with Anthem. Anthem came out, developed by BioWare, and I guess you could say it made a lot of promises and didn't deliver on them. You could say that it wasn't the game that people thought it was going to be. You could say that it was just lacking what a game in that genre should be. You could say a lot of things about it, I guess, at this point. You have the benefit of hindsight saying that it was just a disappointment. Plain and simple, it was a disappointment. So not too long ago, BioWare came out and said, hey, we're not giving up. We're going to try and make this right. We're going to try and reward the players that bought it on day one, that have stuck with it. We're going to try and reward the people that have picked it up along the way, that want to give it a shot. And we're going to do our best to try and fix this game, to try and add what we need to add to it. And we got the news this week that EA has decided that they will no longer be moving forward with what was going to be called Anthem next. I don't know if that was actually going to be the name of the game that they were going to go with, but it was essentially like, this is the initiative to bring to Anthem what it needs to be the game that we wanted it to be. So this was kind of the statement that they put up. I'll have it up on the screen here, but you might not be able to read it. It's a statement from Christian Daly on the BioWare site, and it says, in the spirit of transparency and closure, we wanted to share that we made the difficult decision to stop our new development work on Anthem, aka Anthem Next. We will, however, continue to keep the Anthem live service running as it exists today. So if you are playing the game, if you want to check it out because it's on EA Play and it's on Game Pass, you can go and check it out. It's just nothing new is going to be added to it. So then it becomes, okay, well, what is that team going to do now? Well, they announced they're going to move that team to Dragon Age 4, and then essentially whatever the next Mass Effect is. The Mass Effect remasters or remakes, however you want to call it, that trilogy, that's a separate team. So it's sad to see what BioWare has kind of become. And again, it's tough with a lot of the news this week, games getting canceled, games getting delayed. It's hard to not be negative and to not be down on what's happening. But really, BioWare at one point seemingly could do no wrong. Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, Dragon Age. Was it Dragon Age 2 where kind of the armor started to crack a little bit, right? You kind of started to see a little bit through like, maybe they're pushing themselves too hard. Maybe they're trying to do too much. Maybe it's the influence now that EA is calling the, over the head shots of what's going on there. Maybe that's a problem. And then Mass Effect 3 comes out and it's a disaster. Fans are very upset. And it was really that kind of first huge backlash to a developer that was incredibly cherished, incredibly loved. All that kind of settles, right? Dragon Age Inquisition comes out. I remember picking up Dragon Age Inquisition. I had left a job, and before the new one started, I had 2 weeks. So I essentially had a 2-week vacation in between these jobs. So I was like, all right, I'm going to fill this time with playing some video games because once the new job starts, I'm not going to have time to be playing video games. So I ran out and grabbed a couple of games, one of which was Dragon Age Inquisition. It wasn't for me. I'm not going to say that it was a bad game. There are a lot of people that really like that game. It just wasn't for me. Looking back on it, though, you can see the groundwork for Mass Effect Andromeda. Those games played similar. They felt similar from a control feel in the hands. And you could kind of see that that's where they were moving in the wrong direction, right? Mass Effect Andromeda comes out, and my God, that game got torn apart. And in some parts, rightfully so, for the product that shipped that was on shelves for $60. Bugs like you couldn't believe. I'm a huge Mass Effect fan, but the second I saw what was going on with that game, I did not buy it. I waited. A few months passed by, they patched the game. I picked the game up. I played the game from start to finish. I think I had one bug total that made me have to reload a save. I kind of just locked my process. The game was okay. I don't think it's as bad as everybody makes it out to be, but it's far from what the next Mass Effect should have been, and it was far from what I would say is a good game or a solid game. That studio, I have to imagine, was left in complete and total turmoil after that. The development of that game, from all accounts, was a total nightmare. Just bad. Bad. Not good. They've taken a step back. They go to Anthem. Okay, we're going to try the games as a service thing. The thing that Destiny did. And Destiny has done that to a degree of success. And it just wasn't what people wanted. The game didn't deliver I'm sure that they did not deliver the game that they wanted to. I can't imagine there were too many people at BioWare that were stoked on what shipped with Anthem on the box. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people there that wanted that crack at revenge, that wanted that crack at, let us fix this. Let us show you that we can still make the games that we used to make to that level of quality, to that level of fan satisfaction. And it just didn't happen. So now they are all in on Dragon Age 4, and we have seen nothing from that game except for concept art, cinematic trailer. At some point, they're going to have to be like, okay, this is what the game looks like. Because the longer that it waits without seeing what it is, fans are either going to go one of two ways. They're going to build it up in their head and hype it up so much that no matter what ships, they're going to be upset about it. Or they're going to start to forget about it and start to just kind of lose interest in it. That's a tightrope. I'm not a game developer. The fact that games get made is a miracle. The fact that games get shipped is a miracle. But it's, unfortunately, you got to deal with an unruly fan base. You know, we live in a post-cyberpunk video game world now, but we also live in a post-No Man's Sky world now, right? Post-cyberpunk, a game that is announced years and years before it ships. A game that is built up to be something that it is nowhere near going to be. And then a game like No Man's Sky, which comes out and is shredded to pieces by critics and fans, but they right the ship. They turn it around. So now as a video game developer, but probably more so as a video game publisher, you got to make a decision. Are we going to allow our game to be cyberpunk, or are we going to hope that if we ship a somewhat broken game, that we can turn around and pull a No Man's Sky? That is a dangerous game to be playing, and I really, really hope that this is not what's going to happen to this game. The silver lining here is that they announced that originally Dragon Age 4 was going to be a service game. You know, games as a service, like Destiny, like Anthem was supposed to be. That is no more. They're making the game a traditional single-player RPG, and that is the best thing that could happen for that franchise and for that game. The amount of fanfare that's getting online right now at that news that it will not be a service game is huge. They need to capitalize on that and run with it. That's the marketing I would go with, man. Be like, you love Dragon Age Origins? We've got Dragon Age 4 coming right for you. It's going to satiate that same need. They need that. That's a win for EA, but more importantly, that's a win for BioWare 100%. All right, we're going to take a quick break real quick, and coming up next, we've got a block of things being delayed, which is, you know, is what it is, I guess. Be right back. So this week we had a couple of games delayed, but also we had a patch delayed, and that patch is important because that patch is for Cyberpunk 2077, the game that we are kind of all sick hearing about and sick of talking about. But the next major patch was supposed to be out in February. That's not going to happen due to the fact that CD Projekt Red, the developers of Cyberpunk, were the victims of a recent cyber attack. Kotaku reported on Wednesday a quote from the developer: "While we dearly wanted to deliver patch 1.2 for Cyberpunk 2077 in the time span we detailed previously, the recent cyber attack on the studio's IT infrastructure and extensive scope of the update, means this will unfortunately not happen. We'll need some additional time." Honestly, with what happened, you can't blame them, especially because there was a follow-up report that the hack was so bad they were locked out of their computers for 2 weeks. How can you possibly expect them to work on this patch if they are completely and totally locked out of the tools that allow them to do it? The game has got a lot of problems. Some cannot be fixed by a patch. Some certainly can. It's disappointing to the fans of the game, but to be honest, the real fans of that game have finished that game already. Of course, there are certain people that are waiting to play it, and to be honest, at this point, please wait to play the game. I played through it on Xbox One, and 20 frames a second was the best I got out of my experience. It was a total mess. I will play the game again on PC, and play it when it's been patched properly. End of this year, maybe next year. So if you have not started this game yet, don't be disappointed in this. Just wait. Just wait. Play other things. There's a lot of stuff coming out this spring. There's a lot of stuff coming out this summer. Just wait. Play the game at the end of this year. Wait for it to be okay. It's not surprising that something like this has happened, considering the details of this cyber attack. People trying to hold them hostage, releasing source code and stuff like that. It's like those developers that nearly killed themselves making that game, this is the last that they need to have happening to them. And it's just, that game is just, it's going to go down as one of the craziest stories in video game development. I hope that there is a book written at some point about the development of Cyberpunk 2077, because I have to imagine it is just absolutely insane. All right, so moving on next, we have a pair of games that got delayed. Gran Turismo 7 has stalled out to 2022. Developer cited COVID impact. That makes total sense. I have to imagine a lot of the work that they would do on that game, being out in the field, having to record audio of cars, take photos of cars, it was going to be not an easy task to accomplish when there's social distancing policies, when there's state mandates, all of that stuff. It's makes total sense. I think at this point, fans of Gran Turismo are okay with waiting. Microsoft has got Forza, which typically cleans up with racing fans, especially Horizon. Like, Horizon 4 was absolutely fantastic. I know, was it 7 was the last mainline Forza series, and that was a little bit of a misstep. I remember not liking it too much when I played it, but Horizon was always really good. If Sony kind of wanted to retake part of that pie for the racing game fans, just wait. Just don't push Gran Turismo. Give them the time that they need, so that way when it finally releases, it's the game that it needs to be. 100%. Don't rush it. I don't think anybody that's a fan of Gran Turismo wants them to rush that game. The last game was what? GT Sport or whatever it was, which was kind of like this weird offshoot that I know eventually found its fan base, but at the beginning it just kind of wasn't there. I think everybody is okay with waiting. I would love to play a new Gran Turismo game that is just the way they were, back on the PS3, back on the PS2, back on the PS1, that all-encompassing, like, here's your shitty car that you drive to work every morning, and you could race it on Daytona 5, on the Daytona track, I think that we're all okay with waiting for that one. One that probably people are going to be upset about is the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has been delayed. There was an announcement made on Twitter. I'll toss the image up here. In case you can't read it, it says, "Good morning, everyone. As you have noticed, we've been keeping pretty quiet for a while. With this in mind, the first piece of news we have for you is to confirm that Bloodlines 2 is still in development." This was from Paradox Interactive. Secondly, we have made the hard decision that Hardsuit Labs will no longer be leading the development of Bloodlines 2, which also means that we will not be releasing in 2021 as previously planned. Since we cannot at this time communicate a new release date, we've also decided to stop accepting pre-orders for the time being. And they go on. It makes sense. If you have to change developers, obviously something was going real wrong with that game. I know that is a game that has a dedicated and loyal fan base dating back to the original release on PC. I think for a lot of people, they never knew if a sequel was going to come out. Once it got announced, that fervor reached a fever pitch, and they've just been waiting and chomping at the bit. And I think they just feel like, oh, we've waited so long, we don't want to wait anymore. And having this happen, it's a stake in the heart, for those fans out there. But really, I think at this point, if the development was going so poorly that you need to swap out developers, that's not a product that you want to release. And I think everybody is going to be pretty okay with that for the most part, It's a tough one. It really is. The little bit that I saw of the game, it's... I don't know. I didn't play the original, and I don't know if it was really doing a lot to draw in new players. I think that they were really just kind of focusing on the people that they knew were going to buy it, the people that were fans of the game, and maybe people that have read about the original, gone back to play it, I'm sure that game is probably a little on the archaic side at this point, just because it is an older title. Maybe they bring those people in, but I don't know if they were going to really hit a wide release with this game. And not every game has to. You certainly don't have to. So if that's going to be the case, if they're not going to hit this huge mainstream audience with this game, and it's really just going to be this loyal pack that's been following this game and following this franchise, you can't release something that's going to be disappointing. You just can't do it. They 100% made the best decision for them, and I'm sure that they made the best decision for that game. I just hope at this point the game actually does come out at some point, because that would just be kind of a sad end to, you know, a franchise that people were so excited to see come back, and then to have it ripped away from them. You don't want to see things kind of end that way. Next up is something that's definitely a little interesting, and we'll see what actually comes up of this. But I saw this the other day. This is from Variety, and it's Twisted Metal series from Deadpool writers in the works at Sony Pictures TV and PlayStation Productions. You know what? There are some real dumb TV shows out there. There are a lot of things that you just are like, how did this possibly get made? Like, who is spending money on this? Who is like, oh my God, this is money. This is how we're going to make our money. This is going to save this television network. Honestly, a show about like car combat, if done right, and the special effects are there, because I don't think they're going to go with practical effects. I think they're going to have to go with 3D for a lot of this stuff. Could be kind of cool. Twisted Metal always had like this really weird backstory that was full of lore, you know, like when you played the original on PlayStation, like each character had an ending and all that stuff, and there's this big final boss, you know, Calypso, you know, overseeing the whole thing. All the characters have personality. You know, Sweet Tooth has a very signature look. Axel has a very signature look. They could really do something with this. Like, I can 100% see this being a successful television show that people get into. It's going to be weird enough that it's not just going to be people that understand that this is coming from a video game that are attracted to it. I think that if we start to see like casting and like story details, if they do it the right way and lean in to the ridiculousness that is the lore of Twisted Metal, you're going to find an audience 100%. Now, it's all going to depend on what channel you're on. You're going to have to do this on either a streaming service like a Netflix or, you know, an Amazon, something like that. Or it's going to have to be on like an HBO, a Showtime, maybe FX, I guess. I think FX is still doing some kind of more gnarly stuff. You know, American Horror Story is still on, and, you know, they get away with quite a bit on television these days. If they play their cards right, this could be like a kind of sleeper hit, like really bizarre kind of thing, you know, and it could very much could find an audience, you know, that's for sure. All right, next up is a pair of Sony stories. I get that the last one kind of was as well, but Sony announced this week a few different things. The first of which that we're going to get into is that they have announced that they're coming out with, I guess, what's going to be called PlayStation VR 2. They could come up with another name at some point, but PSVR 2 just kind of, that makes sense. You know, it's the next iteration on what they did. The PlayStation VR thing, I used it once. So I have a VR headset. I have a Rift, or not a Rift. I have an Oculus. Oh God, is it the Quest that I have? The one that's wireless. I have the original, yeah, the Oculus Quest. I had to look it up real quick. I have an Oculus Quest, and I tried VR for the first time. A coworker had it, and it was the PlayStation VR, and I tried it, and I tried Job Simulator, and one other game, Thumper maybe. I honestly can't remember. It was some time ago, and that was an experience that I could not get out of my head. I could not wait to try VR again. I was just so excited about it. But after that kind of happened, I don't want to say that, I don't know if you'd call it a genre, because there's VR games of all genres, but that kind of, I guess platform would be a better title, right? That platform seemed to kind of petered out a little bit. There wasn't as much coming out. There was that first huge wave of games, you know, Job Simulator, Surgeon Simulator in VR. They did the Google Earth VR, which was really cool. A whole bunch of different stuff around that time. Some time passes, and I start thinking about it again. And by time, I mean a couple years pass, and I start thinking about it again. The Quest comes out. I really like the fact that it's wireless, because I wasn't sure if I was going to have the room to be able to do it. You know, in our house, the main living room's a little small. We have this family room that I'm in right now, which is the biggest room in the house, but it's got furniture in it. My desk is in it. My wife's desk is in it. We've got 2 couches in here, you know, a television. But it has the space, but I was like, you know what, let me get a wireless one, and maybe that'd be better. And man, I was hooked. I got Tetris Effect in VR. Could not peel myself away from it. My wife, who does not play video games, although we're going to get into that at the end of this podcast, she got into Tetris VR and was, I mean, like a fiend for it, every night playing it. Could not get away from it. The Google Earth VR was incredible. Going to travel the world and seeing all this weird stuff in VR, even though there's obviously that kind of suspension of disbelief, because the VR experience is based on Google Earth, which is I guess you could say they're 2-dimensional maps that they've turned into 3-dimensional maps. It's very weird. You have to experience it to kind of understand it. But I mean, that was really kind of a breathtaking experience. And that was the thing that really sold me on VR and making me feel a lot better about my purchase of the headset. And I've gone on to play some other stuff. You know, I have the Quest Link to be able to hook it up to the PC to harness more power, to do more stuff with it. And I got to do more with it. I started to run into some issues that were just because of my setup. I couldn't sit at my desk and play. There's so much stuff on my desk. It kept triggering a boundary, even though I'm not in any, like, I can fully extend my arm here and not hit my monitor or anything, but it wasn't playing nice with that. So I got to get back into it. But the idea of the PlayStation VR, because it's just one cord, right? It's a super simple setup. It's a very comfortable headset to wear. I'd say that the Oculus is actually fairly comfortable as well. There are times where you get a little sweaty, even if you were just sitting down playing Tetris. You know, if you're playing for 30, 45 minutes, there's just heat that builds up, you know, in that area. And, you know, even playing with glasses on, I can't play VR without my glasses on. My wife can. It was still comfortable. I still felt like I had plenty of room. It didn't feel like it was rubbing up against my lenses. It wasn't scratching my lenses. So I was paranoid about scratching the lenses of the headset. And that was all fine. But the PlayStation VR, you know, I know some people that have it, and they swear by it. And they've got some killer exclusives on that. I've heard nothing but good notes, or good things about the Astros. Was it Astro's Adventure? Was that it? Because I know the new one, the Astro's Playroom's the PS5 thing. So it must be Astro... Let's take a look real quick. VR. Astrobot Rescue Mission. I've always wanted to check that out. And so even though I have the Oculus, I could see myself getting a PSVR 2 once I finally get that PlayStation 5. 100% I could see myself getting that. So yeah, there's an article up on the PlayStation blog where they talk about it. You know, 4 years ago, we launched the PlayStation VR to offer a transformative new way to play games on the PS4, etc., etc. Today, I'm pleased to share that our next generation VR system will be coming to the PlayStation 5, enabling the ultimate entertainment experience with dramatic leaps in performance and interactivity. Doesn't say when it's coming out. It says that it will not be out this year. Christmas time next year, maybe. You know, that's a cool thing to be able to have for Christmas time in general. And this year, it's going to be hard enough to get a PlayStation 5. That if you also have all these VR units sitting on a shelf that are being unsold, it's just not a good look, you know? So yeah, wait till next year. Give them time to make it right. I don't think that's an issue at all. So the next story for Sony is a sad one, especially if you are somebody that played a lot of PlayStation games in the, let's say, late 90s to mid 2000s. And that is Sony's Japan studio is shutting down. Sort of. They're absorbing the developer into another developer, essentially. So this was a statement issued by Sony earlier this week. In an effort to further strengthen business operations, SIE can confirm PlayStation Studios Japan Studio will be reorganized into a new organization on April 1st. Japan Studio will be recentered to Team Asobi, the creative team behind Astro's Playroom, allowing the team to focus on a single vision and build on the popularity of Astro's Playroom. In addition, the roles of external production, software localization, and IP management of Japan Studios titles will be concentrated within the global functions of the PlayStation Studios. It's a shame because Japan Studio is responsible for a lot of iconic PlayStation games. Just running through the list, some of these were co-developed with another developer. Some were developed solely by Japan Studio. Jumping Flash, Arc the Lad, Parappa the Rapper, let's see here, IQ Final, Hot Shots Golf, Wild Arms, Alundra, Arc the Lad, Vib Ribbon, Legend of Dracoon, and that's all before the year 2000. Moving into the new millennium, Parappa the Rapper 2, more Hot Shots Golf. Oh boy, what else they got here? I know as we move into the decade, Ape Escape. They did a lot of stuff. And then more recently, they did the Gravity Rush games, and they worked on the Demon Souls remake for the PlayStation 5. They did some VR stuff. They did the Everybody's Golf VR. So, I mean, this is a really iconic studio for Sony. I guess they're not going away. You know, the name is going away. The employees aren't. Their creativity and their vision will continue on. And honestly, Astro has become this like kind of unlikely hit for Sony that it makes sense to give that team some more power, because you know the next thing that's coming out is a full-fledged, full-price, AAA level Astros game. It's not just going to be a tie-in game or a pack-in game for the PlayStation 5. It's going to be a big boy game. And that game, honestly, could end up being absolutely incredible. They could do some really cool stuff with it. So, yeah, it's sad to see, but, you know, they're moving on. They're going to do some more cool stuff. All right. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we got some PC news, including some Sony PC news. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Let's kick off kind of a block of PC stories, the biggest of which is yesterday, NVIDIA releases the RTX 3060, and no one gets one. It's really not that much of a different story from when the 3070 came out, when the 3080 came out, when the 3090 came out, when the 3060 Ti came out. Nobody can get them. If you can get them, you are very lucky. Bots are buying them up. Scalpers are buying them up. And if you can get one, it's going to be very difficult to do it at MSRP. The 3060 retails for $329 here in the United States. There is no Founders Edition, though. All of the cards are made by AIB partners. So your MSI, your EVGA, your Asus, all that stuff. They kind of set their own prices on that stuff. Because for like a 3080, it's what, $700 for the NVIDIA Founders Edition, but upwards of $1,000, potentially more than $1,000 for like, you know, an Asus Strix or something like that. What's hard for the 3060 is NVIDIA was already worried about the mining problem. A lot of people are mining on the 30 series cards. You can make a decent chunk of change, you know, more than you would think. I actually looked it up. I have a 3080, and I looked it up, and it was something like, if I just let it run, I could theoretically make like $400 a month mining, which is like way more than I thought I could make mining. So they wanted to strip out some of that stuff, but you can still mine with a 3060. You 100% can. There's something saying you can make as much as $6 a day doing it. So they really didn't really get rid of it. And for a lot of people, the 3060 was the card that they were waiting for. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, it's almost 10% of all users on Steam still use the GTX 1060. So 2 generations ago. So in theory, this is the card that most people would be looking for. Not everybody can afford a super high-end computer. They need a lower range graphics card that can still play games at 1080p and get them more than 60 frames a second. You know, 60 frames a second at minimum, which this card can do. 100%, this card can do. This is a great card for a lot of people, but you can't buy one. And if you can, you're paying insane prices. So Best Buy, which is without a doubt the best place to get a graphics card. If you are trying to get a graphics card right now, do not bother with Newegg. Do not bother with Amazon. Don't bother with B&H. Get one through Best Buy. They're the only one using an actual queue system and the only one that you actually have a legitimate chance at getting and not have to worry about scalpers. Now, the scalpers are still going to get cards, but you 100% have a real opportunity and a real chance to get a graphics card from Best Buy. That's how I got mine. It sucks, and it's a waiting game, and it's a guessing game, and it's stressful, and you gotta be quick on the draw, and you better have your credit card ready, and all that stuff, but you can 100% get one. Here's the issue, though. Pricing for the 3060 was already increased before the card released on Thursday. There were cards on Newegg. Now remember, MSRP, $329. The most expensive card offered on Newegg yesterday was $520. The most expensive card offered on Best Buy yesterday was $630. And the $630 card was the PNY card. That is not a desirable card to have. If you have your options of a graphics card, you're not going to go with the PNY. You really don't want to go with the Zotac. You'll take it, I guess, if that's all you can get. But really, you want to hold out for an MSI, an EVGA, a Founders Edition. But you can't get the Founders Edition for the 3060 because there isn't one, even though they did one for the 3060 Ti. You know, you want to get a reputable manufacturer's card. The fact that there are people out there that spent that on a PNY card yesterday is a shame. $500 or $630 is more than a 3070 retails for. And it's not that far off from what a 3080 retails for. And a 3060 is not a 3070, and it sure as hell isn't a 3080. The supply and demand, the fear of missing out, all of that stuff is driving this artificial just hype that you can't imagine. Being in a Discord chat, trying to find one of these cards and seeing these messages and people just like acting like their lives are over because they can't get these cards. It's sad, and I get it. There's a lot of people that are cooped up in their house that just want to buy a gaming PC to play games. But you really kind of got to think about, what are you buying a gaming PC for right now? I 100% understand in September to December 1st of last year, you were trying to buy a gaming PC because you wanted to have that showcase for Cyberpunk. You wanted all the bells and whistles. You wanted all the ray tracing. You wanted everything. And that game couldn't even deliver that on a 3090. So what are you really trying to buy that computer for? Like, what game is out there right now? Hitman 3, amazing game. I'm going to talk about Hitman 3 in a little bit. Doesn't even have ray tracing. You don't even need one of those cards to be able to get it to look as good as it can look. You don't need one. But everybody's got it in their head right now that I've got to get this card. I've got to get a card. If I can't get a 3080, I'll get a 3070. If I can't get a 3070, I'll get a 3060 Ti. If I can't get that, I'll get a 3060. And there's some people who are just like, fuck it. You can get a 3090 fairly easy if you know where to look. I'll just pay an insane amount of money and get a 3090. I'm not a professional video editor. I'm not using Blender to make intricate things. I just want to play some Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. But yeah, I'll spend $1,500 on a graphics card. It makes zero sense. And it's driving prices up. It's driving demand out the door. It's driving scalpers to continue to just wreak havoc on, I guess you could say, the online economy for graphics cards. I mean, go on eBay and look how much some of these things are going for. There were eBay listings yesterday for 3060s that were as much as the MSRP of a 3090. There's probably somebody that bought one. You don't need it. Just wait. You don't need it right now. If your computer is broken and you need a computer for work or for school, go to Best Buy, get a regular computer. Don't worry about playing video games right now because it's not worth it. The price it would take, the cost to just even get the hardware, let alone the amount of time you'd have to spend searching for the hardware, scraping through Twitter bot feeds, scraping through Discord bot feeds. the hopes of maybe getting into the queue in Best Buy to get one, it's really just not worth it. But man, Nvidia is raking in the money, and that's why it keeps being the way it is, I guess. All right. Next story, a little less sad. Well, I guess not really sad, but HP purchases Hyperx for $425 million. Kingston, the now former parent company of Hyperx, will continue to make hard drives and continue to make RAM, but keyboards, mice, and all the other gaming peripherals that the Hyperx sub-brand made, those will now all shift to HP. Hyperx makes some good keyboards. They really do. I can't imagine that HP is really going to want to change much. They just want to ride that wave and make the money off of it. So I honestly don't think too much is going to come out of this. It's just going to be more money in the pockets of HP. Who cares? So I mentioned earlier that we had some Sony news to get to, and that would be that more PlayStation 4 exclusives are now coming to PC. We already saw a couple of these. They trickled out. Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, and Detroit, I think were the first ones that made the leap. The big one for last year was Horizon Zero Dawn. That one, I think, kind of shocked some people because we're so used to having Microsoft games, they just release on PC. I mean, Microsoft owns Windows, they own Xbox, it kind of makes sense. The games run on both, and at this point, we're all conditioned that the first-party Xbox stuff goes right to PC, and now these days goes right to Game Pass. So to have PS4 kind of pull that trigger to be like, hey, we're going to bring a big title. Horizon was a big exclusive for Sony. We're going to bring that to PC. That's cool, man. That's awesome for PC gamers. They get to experience something that they normally wouldn't be able to experience. They have all of the options on the Microsoft side and none of the options on the Sony side. I thought it was absolutely awesome. And it left people wondering, what's going to be the next thing? Well, it announced this week that Days Gone is coming to PC. But not just Days Gone. Other titles will follow. They didn't say what those other titles were, but other titles will follow. Days Gone's a game that, it didn't get great reviews. I think it eventually found its audience. There are some people that have gone back and played it and were like, hey, it's not that bad. For me, it didn't interest me. I'm not into the whole zombie thing. It just wasn't a game for me. But it's cool that it's coming because it shows that Sony has a level of dedication to bringing first-party titles to PC. And I think that people are happy that it's just happening at all. They don't care that this game has been out for more than a year. They didn't care that Horizon was out for more than a year. They were just happy to get it. Now, Horizon had some other problems. The PC port was not good. They eventually patched it, got it working, got the ball rolling. I think a lot of people are like, well, what's going to happen with Days Gone? Is that going to be okay? I think the difference there is Days Gone, I think, was developed on the Unreal Engine and should be okay, transitioning into over PC. But if this is going to be a permanent thing, what's next? Do they do God of War on PC? Do they do Ghost of Tsushima on PC? Do they do The Last of Us? Do they do the Uncharted games? I think that those would sell. 100%. Those games would sell. Even if they're the PS3 era Uncharted games, people would be happy to have them. The ones that I would look forward to is something like Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Games that now are on the PS5 that have ray tracing. Because as good as Horizon looks on PC, and I'm sure Days Gone will look nice, and as good as God of War would look on PC, and man, that game would look good, trust me. Having like a Miles Morales or a Spider-Man on PC is an instant showcase for what these games look like. Spider-Man I thought looked incredible on PS4. Everything that I have heard, Miles Morales is just a stunner on PS5. But to be able to play that and really get all the bells and whistles out, be able to do 4K 60 frames a second with ray tracing on a PC, which is something that the PlayStation 5 version can't do. They can get close, but they can't quite get that native 4K and the 60 frames a second and the ray tracing. There's different modes of the game, and they all kind of pull from one of those categories to make it work. You can't get all of those tied together. So it'd be really, really neat to be able to see it with all of those features unlocked. The game is also a tremendous game from a gameplay perspective. Because even though it's cool that we're getting something like Days Gone, it's not necessarily that critical darling, right? It's not like The Last of Us. It's not like God of War. It's not like the Spider-Man games. Horizon reviewed very, very well, but I still think it's kind of like that B plus. It's not in that A plus range that like a Spider-Man would be, like a God of War would be, like a Last of Us would be. So right now, it's kind of cool playing the speculation game. It's kind of cool playing the what if game. But I think at this point, there's going to be a lot of fans that are PC only players that are just drooling and chomping at the bit to see what, I guess, bone, Sony tosses them next. So to wrap up the news for the week, quick story about a game that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Crusader Kings 3. Crusader Kings 3 is a game that I played the day it came out and could not stop playing for weeks after that. But eventually, I felt like kind of did what I wanted to do with that game, right? Like, I kind of just wanted to be like, I'm good for now. Let's wait for the DLC. Well, it's not DLC, but in the 49th dev diary entitled A Cold Embrace, Paradox Interactive has announced a cool new update for the game that's going to bring winter. And winter is going to change the game in various different ways. It's going to have an effect on your troops. It's going to have an effect on a whole bunch of different gameplay mechanics. I'm going to have some of the article posted on the screen here, but I definitely suggest going to the Crusader Kings website, crusaderkings.com, and reading through these notes on it. If you're somebody that hasn't played the game yet, this isn't going to be like the thing that gets you to like all of a sudden play the game. It is something cool, so you will get that kind of newish feature if you're coming to the game for the first time. But for the people that maybe have burnt out on the game a little bit, like I have, so the game came out in September, so it's been out for a little while. There's a lot of other stuff that comes out, especially around that time, the holiday time, and it pulls your attention away, right? I think that even though this isn't like the first major DLC, this is enough to kind of pull people back into the game to be like, oh, that's cool. That's something different. I want to go and check this out. So it's kind of nice to see that it's like, hey, we get that it's not the DLC that you wanted, but it's something, and it's enough of a something to get you back into playing the game. So we're going to take our final break for this episode, and we're going to come back with two main things that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about Hitman 3 and gaming trilogies, and then after that, I want to talk about what it's like to be an older, brand new video game player. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, let's move on to this episode's main event. Now, typically, I would want to just do one of these stories to talk about to wrap up an episode, but with this being the first episode, I've obviously had some things kicking around in my head that I want to talk about, and it just so happened to be the perfect timing to kind of bring the two, not together, but to be able to get the two thoughts out of my head. First thing I want to talk about is Hitman 3. Hitman 3 is a game that kind of doesn't exist anymore, right? It's the third game of a trilogy, even though the franchise has been going on for far longer. It's the third game of this trilogy, what they're calling the World of Assassination trilogy. Wraps up the story that they started in the first Hitman a few years ago, ran through with Hitman 2, wrap it up nicely with Hitman 3. The game is excellent. There's not a single misstep in these three games to me. And we're going to talk about how there is to other players. I don't have a lot of time these games to really dig into a game and sit down to play at length. There are a few titles I will make an exception for and drop what I am doing to be able to play them. The Hitman games are one of those. When Hitman 3 came out, I was ready to go. Could not wait. Had that thing preloaded, ready to go the second I got to work that day to load that thing up and play it. Got through the story as fast as I could. Took me about a week to do it just because I didn't have a lot of time to play. And now I've been spending my time going back to the maps, playing through them, just to get mastery level up, just to enjoy the game, to get the story out of the way, and now just to enjoy the levels that they made because they are so intricate and so full of detail and so full of life. And the stuff that IO Interactive does with those games is absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to see what they do with their James Bond game. I've also been able to go back. After I finished Hitman 2, I didn't stick around for the two DLC maps, the bank and the island, so now I've gone back to be able to play those as well. But finishing Hitman 3 made me kind of think about something that's a little rare in video games these days, and it's a gaming trilogy that doesn't have a disappointing entry in it. Those are very few and far between these days. They weren't at one point. Some of these things I'm going to bring up, or some of these franchises I'm going to bring up, are no longer trilogies. But they still have that core trilogy in them, even though if later on they did other entries. The two that come to mind that are the biggest I can think of over the past 20 years, Uncharted and Gears of War. I think at this point we're on Gears 5. They did 4 Uncharteds. Uncharted 1, to me, was not a good game. I had a lot of problems with that game. I did not have fun with that game. It had enough, though, that when Uncharted 2 came out, I was willing to give Uncharted 2 a chance. And Uncharted 2 blew me away. I think it is one of the best games that released on the PlayStation 3. I think it's one of the best games of that entire generation. And I think it's one of the best games of the past 20 years. Uncharted 3 was not Uncharted 2, but it was a very, very good game. It was not disappointing. I think they did an excellent job with it. And obviously Uncharted 4, which for the purposes of this conversation we're not going to talk about, but I mean, that wrapped everything up in a great way. That was a tremendous ending to that franchise, if they so choose to end it there. But it's like, okay, so you have Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. 2 is critically acclaimed. 3 was very acclaimed as well. 1 was at the time, but to me it was disappointing because it just wasn't as good as the other ones. Not just from a storytelling perspective, but from a gameplay perspective. I always felt like I was running out of ammo in that game. I felt it was a little too hard. And I'm not great at games. I'm never going to be the type of person that claims that I am good at playing video games. I play a lot of stuff on easy. I don't have time to be frustrated and lost and stuck in a video game. I want to experience the gameplay for what it is, and I want to experience the story for what it is. Obviously, if part of the hook of the game is harder gameplay, then I'm going to indulge and play it the way they intended. You know, there's some games that just don't have difficulty settings, like Grand Theft Auto. That doesn't have a difficulty setting, so I just play the game as it is. Gears, though, I felt was perfect. I felt that Gears 1, 2, and 3 were equally great. There wasn't a bad game in the bunch. And that's really rare these days. Just like Hitman 3, not a bad game in the bunch. 1, 2, and 3, excellent games. Compare that to games from when we were kids and how those games got away with essentially being fresh coats of paint. Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3, all great games. I think 3 obviously probably gets the bottom rung on that. Most people are going to go to Donkey Kong Country 2. I hold a special place for Donkey Kong Country 1. That is my personal favorite. But I could certainly see why people would prefer to play 2. But those games, outside of a few new gameplay mechanics, they're fresh coats of paint. Just like Mario 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, Mario 2 in America is a very different type of thing. But if you look at Mario and what we would have as Mario's The Lost Levels and Super Mario Bros. 3, it's not a ton different with those games. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a wrong thing. That's not a negative. But people are okay with that back then. They didn't have that disappointment that like, oh, Mario 3 is too much like Mario 1 because it was different enough. Same with like Donkey Kong, you know. I think Gears got away with it. And I think Uncharted got away with it. And now Hitman has got away with it. Because think about how many games out there that have to change for the sequel. Nowadays, everybody expects everything to be a game's service, you know, a live game. There's different expectations on trilogies these days and different expectations on franchises as a whole, as games as a whole for what they offer. And that ties into the negative that I have seen for Hitman 3. It was pretty clear after Hitman 1, when you played through Hitman 2, that the story was going to become more and more important. Hitman 1, it was easy to ignore the story, mostly because the game was released in episodic nature. You tended to kind of forget about what had happened, even though they had recaps and stuff. You kind of forgot what had happened. Hitman 2 being released all at the same time, Hitman 3 being released all at the same time, you know, in one package, one disc. It's front and center. Hitman 3, it's really front and center. The final mission of Hitman 3 is the most different of all of those maps because it's 100% just a linear point A to point B. And we're doing this solely to wrap up the story. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it's not the traditional Hitman gameplay. And there was a lot of feedback on Twitter, a lot of feedback on Reddit that was just like, oh, I didn't like the final level because it wasn't Hitman. But it's the Hitman that IO Interactive wanted you to experience because that's their story that they're trying to tell. That's their story that they're trying to wrap up with that mission. That was their vessel of choice to deliver that final mission. And from a story perspective, it's a cool final mission. Like, if that was like the final act of a movie, it'd be neat. You know, it wouldn't be something you would necessarily complain about. But people complain because you look at, like, the Paris level, the very first level of Hitman 1, and compare it to the final level of Hitman 3. Whoa, they are very, very different things. Hitman 3 has sequences in it that are not related to one of the maps in their kind of murder sandbox, you know? So I saw people posting their thoughts and I guess, you know, kind of personal reviews on the game and just deriding the game for not being what they thought it was going to be, not being what they wanted it to be. And that doesn't make it a bad game. That just means that the expectations for trilogies and for sequels have kind of changed. It makes it so a developer is less likely to make changes or take risks on a later game because, well, we got to satiate the fan base that we've already created. We hope that they're going to come along on the ride with us, right? It's like a band that changes genres. You hope that your fans come along on the ride with you. If they don't, most of the time that's okay because you make new fans as you change your style of music. Fall Out Boy is a huge example of that. AFI is a huge example of that. Even Metallica is a big example of that. You've got fans that are fans from the first album to the last album, and then you got fans that started at different points in between, right? So it's kind of a shame where these developers were so excited to tell you this story and to give you this experience, and then for people to be like, well, that's not what the game is. But that is what the game is. That's the game that they made. They made the game. That's what they intended it to be. You know, I think people get too tied up in the negative, too tied up in being upset that something isn't what you thought it was going to be. I understand you could be disappointed, but you can't then go and say, that game is bad because it's not what I thought it should be. You could say, I don't like it because it's not what I thought it should be, but you can't just say objectively, that game is bad because they did something that I don't like. Now, certainly a developer could do something that nobody likes, make a bad game, you know, the gameplay is bad, they change the controls, they change characters, they did something that caused stumbles along the way in the footsteps of the game. But that's not what happened here, you know. That game is exactly what it needed to be. It needed to be a story-fronted game. The gameplay of Hitman is there. You can finish that story and do it. You don't even have to play the story. You can play the maps individually and not even worry about the story. But if you're going to play the story mode of the games, that's what it's listed as on the menu, be prepared to be told the story. That's what they're trying to do. You don't have to experience it, though. In most games, you have to. You can't play Uncharted without experiencing the story. You can't play Gears of War without experiencing the story. It's so intricately tied into the game. There's dialogues during missions. There's cutscenes. There's all these different things. All that is skippable, or you don't even have to look at it in Hitman. You can just play like the contracts mode and just have nothing to do with the story whatsoever. The only story-related thing is that the character you're playing as is the same character that's in the story, you know? I think we, as video game players, and for people that are going to post our thoughts and opinions, need to understand that we're not always going to get what we want. It's certainly fun to complain about things, and it gets kind of that, I don't know, that passion out of your system, you know? But don't get upset at a developer for making the game that they wanted to make, even though it's not the thing that you wanted it to be. You could be disappointed, but don't say it's a bad game. I guess that's kind of my piece on that. All right. So, to move on to the final thing that I want to talk about, I feel like I've been a little too negative tonight, and I don't like that. I don't want to be negative. I want to talk about the good things about video games. But I guess that one's just kind of been weighing on my mind a little bit. So my wife has started to play video games for the first time. From what I know, because I haven't known her my whole life, or her whole life, is that she played a little bit growing up. I think she told me she had a Game Boy at one point. She had a DS at one point. So she has some type of experience with games, but I think it had been such a distance from that it was kind of like coming to it new again. Last year was the first time I started seeing her take an interest. She started playing a lot of Tetris Effect, and then she started playing a lot of Tetris 99 on the Switch, the Battle Royale Tetris game. And I mean, to say she got addicted is an understatement. She was carrying the Switch around with her from room to room. When she wasn't working or having to do something around the house, she was playing that game. Like, if she didn't have to run an errand or take care of a household chore or the normal things that everybody has to do, she had that Switch glued to her hand. Like, I didn't touch my Switch for months, but I was totally okay with it because it was cool to see her get into it. It was cool to see her develop an interest in something that I have an interest in, that we previously had not had any shared experiences with. But that kind of passed. She kind of stopped playing the game. You know, after a while, you can only play the same game for so much, you know, until you kind of get a little tired of it, a little sick of it. I can't tell you exactly what month it was. It's either November or December. She asked me about playing some video games, like on our Xbox, you know, on the TV, beyond the Switch, because she had only been playing the Switch in handheld mode. We had lost our dock, so she'd only been playing it in the handheld mode. So I told her about Game Pass, and I was like, you know, there's all these games on the Xbox. I'll show you how to get to them. Here's a list, you know, take a look at things you might be interested in. And she did. She took a night, and she looked up a bunch of games that were on Game Pass, read the descriptions. I assume she looked at screenshots. Maybe you saw some video. I'm not sure. Came back with me with a huge list of stuff that she wanted to try. Some of them I kind of was just like, don't bother. She's brand new to games. It was going to be difficult for her to, like, really manipulate the camera and the controls, and I just felt like she was going to get a little too frustrated. And I didn't want her to be so frustrated that she stopped. So I kind of curated a list, and I was like, here's a great starting point. Here's like these 10 games. Play any one of these, and you're going to be off to a good start. So the first one she went with, I was actually kind of surprised about. She went with Blair Witch, the game that came out on PC and Xbox, developed by Bloober Team. They just did the medium. Took her a while to play the game. I think her last save file was like 18 hours. And I think if I looked it up, it said like on average it took like 6 to 8 hours to finish that game. So it took her a while, but she did it. She persevered through it. She figured out the puzzles. She struggled with camera control. She struggled with just the basic things of playing the game, but she got through it, and that was awesome. Then she kept moving on. Since Blair Witch, she has finished. She definitely has a wheelhouse of games that she likes, but I've kind of gotten her to open up and try a few different things. So she finished Blair Witch. She finished Call of the Sea. She finished Tell Me Why, which she really liked. I really liked. I played that last year. She just finished A Night in the Woods 2 nights ago. She played Firewatch, which I really loved. She really liked. She tried Nightcall, but absolutely hated it. And then she actually just finished What Remains of Edith Finch today. Either today or last night. I can't remember. So she definitely kind of has that genre, that narrative, some puzzle solving, you know, kind of the evolution on the point and click adventure game. That's kind of what she's been into. The thing that I wanted to talk about, though, is as I was watching her play these games, I realized how many modern video games are developed on the assumption that the person playing them has played video games before. So you'll see something like, I try not to sit and watch her play the games because I have a really nasty habit of wanting to offer advice. And sometimes it's warranted, or sometimes it's wanted, and sometimes it's not. So I've just decided it's probably for the best if I don't sit and watch her play the games. Because she needs to figure out, you know, puzzles on her own and stuff, especially if it's a game I played before. But I sat there and I watched her play one of these games, and I noticed things that me, as somebody who's been playing video games for a long, long time, would pick up on immediately. The path in the game is brighter than the path that the game wants you to take to progress to the next point is brighter than the other paths. There's different colored flowers because it's the developer's trying to draw your attention to this path, letting you know that, okay, this is where I need to progress. But she doesn't pick up on that. That's not something she would think of. That's not something that somebody's brand new to video games would think of. So she spends all this time going down this path and this path and this path and turning around and getting lost until she finally realizes, okay, this is where I gotta go. Whereas anybody else would be like, okay, maybe I can go down these paths for a collectible, or maybe there's something else I can see, or just, a nicely designed piece of art in the game or whatever. But we know that, okay, we have to go to this path over here to progress in the game. Another big one was in Night in the Woods. In the beginning of Night in the Woods, when you're traveling from the bus station back home, there's a section where it has some light platforming. And it teaches you that if you continue to run with your character and jump twice, on that third jump, you're going to jump higher. That's something that anybody that's played a platformer would just immediately pick up and immediately understand. But she didn't, because she took a look at where she was supposed to be, this tree branch, and was like, oh, well, I can't jump that high. My character, when I press the A button, does not jump that high. That's not where I need to go. So she immediately turns around and goes in the wrong direction, away from where she needs to be, because she doesn't know. So I'm sitting here and I'm realizing that this is happening as I'm watching her play the game. I'm seeing this unfold, and I really wanted to see how long it was going to take her to get it. And eventually she kind of asked, and I was like, oh, okay, they want you to hold the run and jump. And she eventually got it. She's like, okay. And I brought this up to her. I was like, man, this is kind of interesting, that this is an interesting problem that I'm seeing with you, is because you are new to video games. You are having struggles or frustrations that people that had played video games before would not have with this game. They wouldn't have these problems. They wouldn't feel lost. They would know what to do. And so I guess it's kind of disheartening in a way to see that so many games are developed just making these assumptions, just making these decisions because they feel that, like, okay, this game is going to be played by adults, or at the very least a teenager. They've played games before. It's fine. Whereas when you play like a Lego game or something that's enjoyed by adults, but also aimed towards children, there's going to be a lot more tutorialization and all that stuff. And I don't mean we have to tutorial the hell out of all of our games. But the other thing to keep in mind is we don't get game manuals anymore. We don't get those instruction booklets. There's a control map in a lot of games that says, okay, A does this, X does this, the triggers do this, etc., etc. But there's nothing to describe mechanics unless it's an in-game tutorial that's popping up on the screen. And I know the PlayStation 5 is kind of building in that walkthrough type function, where if you get stuck, you can look at a quick video that'll kind of tell you what to do, but nobody really knows long-term how that's going to be supported. So it's difficult, and it's tough to watch her get frustrated at times. And thankfully, she's the type of person that's just going to push through that, and she's going to finish these games. I mean, she's beaten more games in the past 2 weeks than I have in the past 6 months. So it's cool to see that she's willing to do that. It's cool to see her open up and be interested in games. But man, I feel like if you're an adult that's coming to video games for the first time, certain genres and certain games are going to be very, very difficult for you to get invested in. And a lot of people might just feel too frustrated and just check out. And that sucks, because video games deserve to be played by as many people as possible. There's some amazing stories that exist only in video games. Some of the best stories that I've ever been told were from a video game and not from a movie and not from a television show. And I'm really excited for the future to see her get to experience those characters and get to experience those stories like I have, and like so many of the rest of us have. But man, if she was a different type of person, I don't know if she would have gotten to that point. Something to think about. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Push Start to Listen. We'll be back next week with a whole nother roundup of video game news and another kind of thought piece at the end. Check out the Sony State of Play kind of talking about on the channel already. I'm going to try and stream at some point over on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/BRKNGLXY, Broken Galaxy. I know I spell it weird. I'm going to try and stream maybe this weekend, throughout the week, try and pick it back up, make it a regular thing. Definitely committing to the podcast, but I'd like to try and commit to at least streaming 1 or 2 nights a week. I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Take it easy.